What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Dyad in the Forest, episode 173. What's going on, Chaco?
Is it 173 or is it like kinda? I don't know. It's gonna be an interesting episode because we are gonna be taking part in a roundtable with some of the best amazing creators from across Star Wars on all platforms. So I'm really excited about that. At the helm is gonna be our good friend, Star Wars lawyer.
How's it going, guys?
Hey.
Hello.
Hello, what have we here?
Exactly.
It's good to be here. I'm really excited about this. This has come together really well. We're going to be talking about Project Necromancer.
Yeah, it's always good to be able to like this is why I started making content in the first place, is to mix it up, to get a bunch of creators in and to just hobnob. I think we'll have a lot of interesting opinions, both for and against. But yeah, Project Necromancer.
Yeah.
Shout out to Darthman86 for the 24 months. Also to everyone in the YouTube side for Dyad in the Forest. We will be rotating out, so we're still going to stream the conversation through and through. It's going to be a
We'll still be in the chat as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's up, Jake76, Baronessa, Quicksilver Girl, Pat's in the chat. How's everybody doing? Thanks for being here. The reason why I wanted to do Project Necromancer is because a good friend of mine, Bennett or Bina Bees, they did a video talking about Project Necromancer, and they introduced this concept called the crocodile under the bed. So I'm going to pull that up and play it so that everybody can see kind of where this whole process started from.
In writing, typically in sci-fi and fantasy, called the crocodile underneath the bed. So in sci-fi and fantasy, you have a suspension of disbelief. The thing, like, as far as your imagination is going to stretch within any given piece of media. Like, Star Wars is a space opera, so the rules around science are very loosey-goosey. It doesn't actually fucking matter if there's gravity in space, etc. Because if you start addressing things like that, the story sort of falls apart and distracts from what the writer is intentionally trying to do. So when you are a fantasy or sci-fi writer, you have to understand what the crocodile under your bed is. Basically, the thing that you don't talk about in your piece of media, lest it fall apart.
So yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about because, and like I said, Bennett, also Breyer, because we have this situation now where we kind of have the building blocks of Project Necromancer. We know the who, we know sort of the looseness around the science. You got to have midichlorians, and you need these clone bodies for Palpatine. So now we want to talk about, do we need more, or is what we have enough? And so we have a huge panel, lots of good friends from over the years. So I'm going to kick it off by introducing and bringing on Breyer first.
Shout out to Cal for 34 months.
Hello.
How's it going, Breyer?
Hello, Breyer. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Sorry, I haven't seen you in a while, and it makes me happy.
No. I have been sort of hiding on the FYP as well. Everyone came out of hiding when I made that video. And I'm like, oh, people still care about my Star Wars thoughts. That's interesting. So I understand that.
It's weird, the FYP. Like, sometimes I'll disappear for months on end and see the comment, I haven't seen you in like 2 years. I'm like, I've been making content.
I've been here. I've never left.
We've been out here. We've been trying.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Next, I'm going to bring up another good friend of mine, Nick, Indy Wise Guy.
Hey, everyone. How's it going?
Hello. How's it going, buddy?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Doing good.
Fantastic.
Also, fantastic, terrific, great.
Everyone who's watching, I highly encourage you all to make sure you are following every single person that gets brought up here, because they're all fantastic.
Yeah, they're all really good people. We fostered a great community. And someone else that I'm bringing on next that is fostering their own positive and great community is Sawyer, aka Sawyerism.
Is that Sawyerism?
It is. It is. Are you surprised
Hello.
to see me?
No.
A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. And next, we're going to bring on someone who just had a very interesting time meeting some very high up people at Lucasfilm and possibly embarrassed themselves if the caption of their video is to be believed. Kyle Katarn.
Hello there.
Hello.
General Kenobi.
Hey, thanks for having me on here. I'm really excited to be here and do this with everyone.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I'm really excited to get into the topic. And the next one for this segment of the panel is going to be Star Wars Facts Guy, the king of telling people you like PowerPoints.
Can we not?
My goodness, you caught me in the middle of drinking my Dasani Galaxy's Edge water. $7. $7. It tastes like early stage capitalism.
Tate,
yeah.
What a shill. Look at that headline.
guys, like there are 7 people watching Acolyte on release, and it's everyone here and me. We need to get the ball rolling. I have to do what I have to do. I have to do what I have to do.
Yeah, I hear it's great. I can't wait to see it.
I recently heard that if you use the actual name of stuff, that means you're a shill. That's how people know.
Oh.
Hey, man, I'm still waiting on my check then. I don't play by my money. Run me my check, Disney. But yeah, so let's get started. I'm going to kick it off with Briar, since it was their video that sort of sparked this for me. So let's talk about where we are with Project Necromancer. We started it off with, obviously the Palpatine returning in the Rise of Skywalker. Then we get the Mandalorian, where it sort of fleshes some things out, and the Bad Batch. Honestly, I want to say even kind of starts in the Clone Wars when you got your kidnapping younglings then. So let Briar kick us off.
Yeah. So my opinions on Project Necromancer as a whole is I don't care anymore. I feel like that's like I like if you're gonna tell me somehow Palpatine is returned, I'm gonna just take it at that point. We're here at this point. I feel like there's only so much explanation that you can give me. Because Star Wars as a fandom, we like to pick apart things, which is sort of like the concept of like crocodile under the bed, which if you went to go Google the concept after the video, I'm so sorry. One of my professors explained this to me. It does not exist in any formal sense. I guess. Yeah, but it's basically the idea like once you start like interrogating this thing, people are gonna be like, well, it's going to get too complicated to explain. You're going to get into the weeds. When Star Wars, in my mind, is a space opera, it's more fantasy than sci-fi. Like, so when you try to explain like the technicalities of it or try to build it up in a way that it makes sense, like, let's all agree that not everything in Star Wars makes sense. And trying to make it make sense, I think, makes a bigger mess. I think the purpose of Project Necromancer should have narrative weight. And the only way for it to have narrative weight at this point is to go forward instead of backwards, if that makes sense. Like, what was the end goal with Project Necromancer? Just to bring Palpatine back? That seems like, that doesn't feel like Palpatine's supposed to be this mastermind. That can't be the be-all, end-all, end goal. I want to see where that plan was supposed to go. And that can only happen if we like, fingers crossed for the Rey movie, unless we move on past like events in the sequel trilogy. That's sort of like where I'm at right now with Project Necromancer.
Okay. Any thoughts on that? I know we have a wide range of opinions on Project Necromancer, so it's just going to be we're going to feed off of each other.
I mean, I have a thought, particularly about suspension of disbelief. Yes, like absolutely. That's how most sci-fi and fantasy at the core of it is like, if you examine it a little bit too well, it starts to fall apart. And while you're right, we shouldn't really examine things too closely. I will point out it is a time-honored tradition among Star Wars fans to come up with the most bullshit answers to questions. And that goes all the way back to George Lucas. Like in A New Hope, Han Solo claimed that he can make the Kessel Run in less than 14 parsecs. Parsec is a unit of distance, not time. So he's not really saying his ship is fast. He's saying he can get there in less distance. And when this was pointed out to George Lucas, he said, well, actually, the Kessel Run takes you close to a black hole, which bends the space and time continuum. So he goes closer to the event horizon, and he's daring pilot. And he pulled that out of his ass. He absolutely did. But that is something that is as old as Star Wars fandom itself, I think, is coming up with these ridiculous explanations. And I think it's a tradition. It's a tradition at this point. But the reason it's necessary is because if you start to examine it, it really doesn't make sense, at the core of it.
Yeah, the context of the conversation was because he was trying to say the Millennium Falcon was the fast ship. So then he goes into distance.
It's like, if you're weird. Like, bro, at 30 miles, I can get there in 10. It's like, what does that even mean?
I think for me, the Necromancer as a lore person is just the intrigue is in the lore itself. Like, knowing more about it is not necessarily necessary. Thank you, Captain Redundant. But learning more about what they were thinking about in terms of a narrative perspective or a writer's perspective of how they were going to connect these dots and these threads is something that's interesting to me. So it's not necessarily like if we don't get anything from Project Necromancer, any more of it, it doesn't matter to me. I don't think I need it all that much, but like watching it in real time with Chaco and Chaco going, "That's Dathan," and I'm just like, yeah, this is like interesting stuff to me. It's more about expounding the lore and going into those weeds purposefully. But I agree, we don't really need more of it.
Yeah, bringing up Dathan, I think that is one of the cool aspects when you have like a character kind of grow out through it, and you have this different kind of vine versus like the main through line is like, okay, we're going from the beginning of the Empire to the sequel trilogy, and this is just this main through line, and all these other characters are kind of surrounding it, versus it's like, all right, let's branch off from this main vine, we're going to follow this other character, and then there's these adventures with Dathan, Miramir, they have Rey, you have Luke and Lando kind of surrounding that vine, and then you tie it all back in with Rey being, the granddaughter of Palpatine, and he wanting to inhabit her body. Like, that works to me better than trying to explain the nitty gritty of like, okay, we need beings with M counts. And because it's like, that's fine, but like, I want this to be more about the characters. And for me, the Bad Batch, that was better. Like, Omega's planning on escaping, Omega's, like, tooling all of her story arc from season 1 till now. Like, that was what the core for me was when it came to her relationship with Project Necromancer. The science and everything else about it was just like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. And the science about it too hasn't really been explained. We know that they're looking for people with M counts, whether they're possible younglings before the Empire comes up, but never is really explained as to what it is makes them more efficient to that Project Necromancer than any other person in the galaxy. And I think that's fine. I think it kind of goes back to what both Kyle and Briar said. It's like, you don't need to explain it out to the nth degree. It's happened. It's this cool thing, whether you like it or not. And let's move on, because there's so much more story to tell inside of this galaxy, and we keep circling back to these same core characters. It's like, let's go on a brand new adventure.
Yeah, if I can build off the brilliance of what everyone has said so far, I think it's we're all kind of on the same train of thought, really. And I think what it comes down to with the fandom at the end of the day, and the kind of culture that's been fostered, is that there always is a desire to explain things within Star Wars fandom. And that's kind of the way the projects have been. That's kind of the way the novels and the shows, that's the way it's developed over time. And it turns the discussion into more of a lore versus a narrative opinion. Not to divide into camps, but you either, you can see the lore angle, like, yeah, Star Wars is a beautiful, rich tapestry and everything weaves together, and it's fun to chase and connect the dots with friends. And then you get the narrative aspect where it's like, well, narratively speaking, every project should be able to stand on its own and have its own integrity and its own merit. When it comes to the Project Necromancer content, I feel like what we've gotten with things such as The Mandalorian, Bad Batch, even some of the novels, my favorite oddball being the Star Wars Commander mobile game, where the zombie stormtroopers are because of Palpatine trying to find prolonging life things. So threads everywhere, but they feel more like table dressing than trying to establish, like Bryce said, a narrative through line to like, okay, this is why we're getting to this point. It's more just table dressing to be like, yeah, that would connect. Oh yeah, clones. The word necromancer. Yeah, buzzwords. It doesn't feel like it's trying to establish a timeline of events or a canon of events. It kind of just feels like it's there to sprinkle in. And I think it stems from them not really knowing what to do with the hill they've climbed up. They don't really know what to do now that they're there. And I think they are realizing, like, yeah, guys, we kind of hedged our bets a bit too much on this. And I can see them weaning away from it. But it's been a very weird 5 years of them oscillating between let's justify this extensively versus let's distance ourselves from it as much as we can.
Yeah. I
Agreed.
kind of the way I see it is that, it's the old Qui-Gon quote, right? Your focus determines your reality. And unfortunately, there's been a heavy focus from some people in the fandom on tearing down projects. And then because of the effort to tear down, well, now they have to kind of bolster the pull back and put more emphasis on that aspect to explain it versus George Lucas was just throwing spaghetti at a wall. Like the entire time. That's what all Star Wars is. That's what all the Clone Wars is. When asked, what planet does Obi-Wan come from? He didn't know. He said Stew John because he was talking to Jon Stewart. And that's how it's always been, right? And then now Disney picks it up, and it's interesting because Disney seems to be taking a lot more seriously than George did in a way. And then gets made fun of for not doing it at the same time. Now, as far as Project Necromancer specifically, I mean, all the threads are there, especially if you're a fan of the expanded universe. If you read Plagueis, you know that Plagueis's master was heavily into science and all this stuff, and then they were trying to use the marry science and Sith technologies and ancient techniques in order to prolong life and all this stuff. And obviously, Palpatine was heavily involved in cloning. He has all of the resources in the world. His master was trying to attain this. Every Sith Lord is trying to attain immortality.
They attained immorality.
They're immortal.
Oh yeah, they succeeded on the immorality part.
They're not the good guys. They're not the good.
But all of the threads are very obviously that. What was it? The Star Wars 2015 comic you had? What was his name? Cyclord 5.
Silo 5.
Silo. Yeah, he was just clone himself and come back. Like it's happened in Legends. Like
I mean,
it's a thing.
The breadcrumb in issue number 12 of that story. He's got Luke's hand floating in a jar on Exegol to like be used as like a specimen for blank. They still haven't defined it, but
Yeah.
The thing I think needs to be realized by Disney is that the people who are not going to accept it aren't going to accept it. That's done. So I don't think we need any more. I think it's fascinating. I love the lore aspect. I don't ever think lore should overtake narrative, or the explanation should overtake the narrative. And so that's kind of where I'm at with it.
I think I can offer an interesting perspective. No, let's not bring Luke back. I think. What?
Bring him back.
His real name was the Ukulele.
I'm all for it.
This time he's got 3 U's in the name, and then another one shows up with 4 U's in the name, and it gets bigger.
Oh, wow.
Luke would be the only time that I'd be okay with the silly CGI nonsense that they've been doing, because he's not supposed to look quite right. You know what I mean?
There you go.
Like, that'd be the only way that I'd be okay with them doing that technique, would be for Luke.
Yeah. Anyway, I think I can offer a unique perspective being the Star Wars scientist. What perplexes me is that I think that fandom has changed a lot over the past 20 years, as the internet changes a lot, as social media culture changes a lot. And, well, then again, I wasn't like a conscious human being when the prequels were coming out. So perhaps correct me if I'm wrong. But it is my understanding that at least for my generation, we were all gung-ho to just accept midichlorians for what they were, as George Lucas described them in the prequels. And as a scientist, they've always frustrated me because they don't make sense at all. He was trying to take the mitochondria and turn it into like a separate organism, like mitochondria actually were many, many millions of years ago. And so that, like, starting that just foundational concept that is required for Project Necromancer, it doesn't make sense. So if we're going to get into a heated debate, oh my gosh, like this cloning doesn't work. You can't clone force sensitive people. You can't do this. Like none of it makes sense foundationally. But that being said, as a Star Wars fan and not a scientist, I am kind of on the same page as a lot of the people here. Like, I just take it for what it is. And I think, like, to enjoy science fiction, fantasy, space opera, whatever, I think you kind of just have to be prepared to just, you know, you don't have to love it, but it also can just be what it is and leave it alone. I think the more we explain it, the more trouble we're going to get into, which is what happened with the midichlorians. As the more detail that was added to them, the more complicated they became.
Yeah. I think
the Yuuzhan Vong are a whole other different thing. That's going to be a separate round table.
Let's go. Let's go.
Oh, definitely.
I'm
bring
in.
back
They're
Vong.
disgusting,
Got a lot
and I hate them.
Yeah, like I don't even know what that is because
I'm happy for you. I'm so happy.
I have like
Game
this refusal to read the books on principle at this point alone. Because I feel like if I have to do homework to understand what is going on in a piece of media, what is the point? Like, I think about it from an aspect of like me trying to introduce my friends to Star Wars, or trying to sit down and watch Star Wars with my niece. Like, my family were big Star Wars people. When the Rise of Skywalker came, me and my whole clan went to go watch Star Wars, and I sat next to my niece. My niece was looking over me, asking me questions about and I'm like, sis, I don't know what's happening in this film any more than you do. And usually I can explain. And I feel like we're losing people. Like when I talk to my friends who aren't as big Star Wars fans, but want to like still talk, like they're losing people. I feel like Star Wars used to be like this, like it used to be an event, you know, going to a movie, dressing up in cosplay, like my niece that I was talking about, dressed up as Rey for the movie, and like looked so sad leaving that theater because couldn't understand the movie. Like it was too fast paced, just things were going over their head. And the same thing, like going to watch, like we have a project every 5 seconds, and they don't feel, in my opinion, don't feel as special anymore because we're chasing after every glup Cheeto, right? Every explanation. And I feel like Project Necromancer is like emblematic of that larger issue in Star Wars. That like the fact that I didn't even know I haven't had a name until I made that video. I didn't know that the Palpatine Project had a cool name. I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, somehow Palpatine had his return. Was I happy about it? But I'm like, that at this point, that's a good enough explanation for me. I don't need to think about it too deeply. And now we have projects, because when Omega was first introduced, I'm like, Omega better not have anything to do with Palpatine. And then when they started introducing that, I was like, I guess here we are. We can't just have a character that stands alone, I guess. And I felt very much like Omega's whole obviously Omega's an interesting character, and I love Omega because they did an excellent job with the character work, but it still feels like the origination of that character was solely to explain this thing that I felt didn't need an explanation. Like, I enjoyed the Bad Batch, but I'm also just like, what is the narrative purpose of Bad Batch? What is it adding to the larger narrative and themes of Star Wars that we haven't already gone over? You know, like, I'm like, I don't feel like this is adding anything new or any new perspective other than, again, new blurbos for us to wonder, well, where the heck were they during XYZ? Because that's my question at the end of the Bad Batch. I'm like, they give me an explanation, but I'm like, this doesn't feel satisfying. So I don't know. I feel like that's why, like, when you start getting into the weeds of these things, that it just adds, again, more complications that need to be explained. And now we have more offshoots of things that need to be explained.
No,
what you're explaining is
Yeah.
one of the reasons that like the Acolyte has me super excited is because I think Star Wars works best as a generational type of storytelling, where this is a new period of time that you don't have a bunch of things. I feel like we keep trying to jam things into the Clone Wars era, and it's just messing it up. You know, we're just going to get more and more complex, and I think we're hitting going to hit a point of critical mass. I think there's also something to be said about I also feel like, and maybe this is only applies to the critically online, like I feel like most of us here probably are, but it feels like people don't want stories anymore. To quote
Oh.
Tate.
Oh, I know a thing or two about that.
But rather than turning on a show to enjoy the journey, they have something in their head that they want to see, and then they judge the project off of how close this is to that.
Mm-hmm.
There's
And
this
so,
demand
yeah,
also
that's the
for
narrative.
instant gratification. Plot
Where were the
the results
Clone Wars
immediately,
flashbacks in Kenobi?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no slow burn
Rightfully
anymore.
absent. Rightfully absent.
I do think though that Chaco, you just said
Kyle,
something.
before you go, I'm gonna press pause. I'm gonna rotate some people in. So before you go, Nick and Sawyer, if you have any, I mean, not last thoughts because I'll bring you guys back in, but if you have any thoughts on this round,
Go ahead, Sawyer.
No, I think this was like, my opinion changed before I even got to say anything because everyone has wonderful takes that are great. But yeah, no, I'm good.
My last thought is that I think kind of touched on is that we don't need everything explained. The initial lure of Star Wars was that it was just there, and kind of to Chaco's point with the Acolyte coming, it's just there. There's no explanation that's needed to get into those points, and we don't need that explanation.
But Keanu Mundy said,
no. All right, I'll catch you guys later. Hang out in backstage, and we'll see you.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Next, I'm going to bring in May, Dark Side May. How's it going?
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
So you've been listening in. Do you have any thoughts on what's been said so far?
Everyone's nailing it. Like every point that I had, somebody's brought up, and then plus more that I hadn't even really thought of. I like the dark side a lot, so I'm kind of thinking about Project Necromancer in a way where, like, how does it like connect to kind of like Darth Plagueis, and like trying to form a dyad. And then there was all of this time, I don't know if y'all remember back when it seems like Grogu was going to be more of the Omega of everything, and then it kind of switched. So like the one thing I have an issue with is kind of like, why does it start and stop so much? Like, why is it so difficult if this man's like, you know, all powerful, even if he is like not really alive or, you know, going on? He has so many lackeys. Like, why has like Omega been able to blow it up? Why has hi Crystal? Why does it keep like failing, and like why is it so difficult when it, again, like in, you know, other iterations of different versions of media, it happens and the guy just like does it, he clones himself and it's like no big deal. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't think we're gonna see anything more from it. I just don't. I think at this point it's kind of like you would have to go and explain again, like so much in order to be like, well, how did it come back? And then how did it actually transpire? And then like, do we care because something awful is going to happen to somebody we care about if we do get that side of the story? Probably, most likely, because it seems like young people have to get hurt in order for this to work. And like, I don't want to watch that story. Like, not really. So the one thing that I would be curious about, just because I love Katie O'Brien, is if Elia Kane like might have something to do with that, and if they would ever explore that aspect of it, because she seems very involved in a very shady way with these sorts of things. But I don't really have that much to add to what everybody's already said.
One of the things you said though reminds
before you
me
go,
of,
Chaco, I'm gonna bring up one other person, Jared the Dark Jedi.
Howdy.
How's it going?
Hey, Jared, great to
Good.
see you.
Good. Hey, very, very excited. You know, share some screen with some folks I haven't gotten to. Briar, back in the day when I first joined TikTok, you and Chaco were like some of the main people I was getting into my For You pages. I trained it very quickly that I like Star Wars and figured that out pronto. So it's that's exciting. It's exciting, and obviously, Chaco, you and I've done several things together. So hyped to share some screen time with some folks I haven't gotten to work with either ever or in a while.
Yeah. Well, I'm rotating out right now, but
Get out of here then.
Before you go, I wanted to respond to something you said earlier. You said something that was a perfect response to what Briar was saying about like what does the Bad Batch add if it's just about Omega? Like what? And I think that what you said about the Clone Wars era reaching critical mass, that's what the Bad Batch was supposed to add, was closure to sort of end that chapter. Like if anything, the contribution to Star Wars that the Bad Batch gave us was like an end to this era definitively. Like they sank Camino, damn it! Like it was to me a very overt closing of the book. No more Clone Wars content. No more era focus. It's done. That I think is what the Bad Batch contributed.
Fingers crossed.
So just real quick, three real quick things. May, what you describe as one of my favorite things about Palpatine is that he is this like super powerful evil, has all the wealth and riches, and all of his plans are constantly being foiled by like Padme giving a speech and inspiring the galaxy. And he's like, God damn it. Like everything is just, it's so thinly there that any disruption, I love that about him because Palpatine sucks in the best way.
Yeah.
Kyle, I love your beard, and I've been wanting to do something with you for a long time. So it's just great to actually meet you. Jared, I was trying to do a Darth Vader Bejeweled edit, but it came out so cursed that like I almost destroyed my computer. So that's what I was.
That is so funny. I want you to know I've been sitting on the edge of my seat ever since that one stream you and Element did where I was like, what is he cooking? Like I had no idea. I could not. I was so on the edge of my seat. I was like, I have no clue, and I love that, but that is sensational.
It was horrifying. I had to kill it with fire. Anyways, we'll be back, y'all.
All right. Thanks for hanging out. Chaka, I'm gonna bring up Emma Leia Hutzlayer next. And then Kyle, if you got one thing to say for this last round, and then I'm gonna rotate you out.
Sure. Yes, I guess just in summation of my thoughts. I don't love the execution of Project Necromancer, particularly the implementation of Palpatine's return initially. Like I have less of an issue with the lead up, the retroactive lead up that we're being given, but like Fortnite, that was a weird choice. That was a weird choice, and even someone like me, I don't think I can defend that choice. I will defend Project Necromancer though, because I feel like it's no sillier than Dark Empire's resurrection storyline in 1991. True. It's no less outlandish than that. And if anything, like I said with art direction, like the big floaty Palpatine arm thing, freaking cool visual. Like I really liked just the aesthetics of that return. So yeah, I guess I'm in the pro camp, if anything.
All right, thanks, Kyle. We'll get you back in here later. Now gonna bring in Lady Dragon JJ.
Hi.
Hey yo.
Hello. Not somehow still a hater.
If you also wanna rotate me out, I just have like a parting idea just to build on what Chaco said and what Kyle Katarn said. I think it's clear that with that episode being the series finale rather than a season finale, that was the closing of the book. And I think the point of inserting Project Necromancer into this show was to just kind of sprinkle in the salt and pepper of it's gonna be a rough road for Palpatine, and it's going to take all the way to the Rise of Skywalker for him to see any kind of reward or conclusion to his project. But I also say like the pursuit of the finer details is a journey away from mystique, and I think all they've given us is perfect. They don't need to give us any more. It's kind of like lightsabers, when everything about lightsabers is cool and it's fun until you watch Hacksmith's lightsaber and you realize the technological limits and you look at what it's capable of in today's technology. You're like, that's not a lightsaber. And so it takes away the mystique. So I love the Bad Batch for setting that up, and I agree that more of the finer details is not needed, and it should end there.
All right. Well, you're gonna be backstage, so I don't think that'll kick you out of the streaming. But we'll bring you back in later. But now I want to hear from Emma and JJ since they're both in
We
here,
were
and
brought in
and I just saw your caption is somehow still a hater.
I
So
know,
dirty.
and that killed me. I mean, JJ, you're so real for that. Honestly,
Oh my god.
I have to respect it. I have to respect it.
You know what? I want to be nice. I want to be reasonable. I want to be classy, but God has different plans for me. I'm that serious. I hate that movie. I hate that choice, and I hate Clone Palpatine. I will never budge. I will never back down. And this is coming from somebody that loves Sith lore and dark side lore. It did not work for me. It did not land for me. And for me, the issue can be personal because it's gendered the way it attaches itself to Rey as a character that I love, and she is forever, and I hate to use this word, tainted by the stench of the clone Palpatine introduction into this lore. And it's like Breyer has said it perfectly. You address crocodile under the bed, you gotta explain it, you gotta run it to the fucking ground now. It's done. And we're just like sort of pivoting around it, ignoring it, as if the Rise of Skywalker wasn't this galaxy breaking event where like 2 billion ships showed up at one call to fight this great evil that returned somehow. And I'm supposed to be like, cruise around that. Never.
JJ, if Lando Calrissian gives you a call and says like, hey, I need you to show up in a ship, are you not going to show up?
Dude, for Lando, I am folding faster than a lawn chair. He asks anything. If Lando tells me, will you accept Clone Palpatine? Yes.
But even in that, right? Like the movie before, Princess Leia called for the galaxy to come to her aid, and no one came to her aid. But I love Lando, but Lando Calrissian calls, and then that's when you decide to come help. And
okay,
we're
going further into trust than I wanted to.
Don't take this the wrong way, but I love you, dude. Shit, I love you so
the
much.
cape. It's the cape. Maybe if Leia had a bit of cape, it might have worked.
Oh yeah, okay, that's what's needed. Sorry,
I do have to say that I was really thankful, Breyer, that you brought up the whole crocodile under the bed thing, because in all my years, I am an English teacher. And in all my years, I had never heard that phrase, and I felt like the silliest goose. When I heard you say it, I was like, duh, of course. And so I'm just so thankful that you brought up that piece of analysis, because I think it really does matter, especially like I know you guys were talking about earlier, like high fantasy set in space versus science fiction. And I know that like Star Wars sometimes is a difficult to categorize as far as genre goes, because it does have like a little bit of everything. But for me, the lack of hard science takes it out of science fiction and into high fantasy. But I just want to start by saying how thankful I am to be included. I admire all of you guys so much, and this is just so cool. I remember watching Rise of Skywalker, and I was like, okay, like I'm on board with Palpatine being the big bad, because I think that the concept of him like trying to cheat death or escape death really puts a finer point on the fact that telling Anakin that he had this power already was how he was able to seduce Anakin to the dark side, and that was like a big portion of like what was so attractive about this this connection for Anakin. So I think that connection is important, and also the execution was poo-poo. Poo-poo. Before the Bad Batch finale, I did a little bit of a thread, because I've always said that like one of the biggest parts of Star Wars, and the way that we've sort of always consumed it, is dramatic irony. So because of the fact that we got episodes 4, 5, and 6 before we got episodes 1, 2, and 3, we know what happens. And so that is part of what makes the tragedy of Anakin Skywalker so gut-wrenching. And I've said this several times. I've seen the prequels more than 100 times, and every single time I hope that Anakin's going to make the right decision. Every single time.
The tragedy
you know
of
what I
that
mean?
film. Yeah, the
I
tragedy of
know
that film.
it's so tragic, and I think the added tragedy is that we know what's going to happen. And so contextually for Star Wars as a whole, dramatic irony I think is really important to why the storytelling can be so effective. And so I don't necessarily hate the filling in the blanks in between. It's just not happening fast enough for me, because my interests lie in the sort of like mysticism and spirituality of the Force, and sort of the magic of that and how that interacts. And so my questions here are, like, how did Palpatine get his spirit, his essence into a new body? That's my question. And that's sort of where I felt like the midichlorians came into play.
Does it matter
It
though?
was
But we don't
dust and
know.
pixie dust.
Yeah, that's what I mean. We don't know. Does the body, like, where does the Force lie? Is it the interaction between the midichlorians and the spirit, or is it just in the physical or just in the spirit? And so that to me was a really interesting question that I'm hoping gets answered at some point. And I think that's why the midichlorian count was high, and why, we find Grogu in The Mandalorian being pursued by the Empire remnants. And so it added a little bit of Force lore for me. And so from that perspective, like, this is just a theory. That's my personal theory. I think that the body has to have a high M count that's sustained in order to host Palpatine's essence. And so I don't know. I'm 50-50. I flip-flop from day to day. Every time I hear JJ talk about how bad it is, I'm like, no, girl, you're so right. You're so right. And anytime I hear someone talk about, this, that, or the other thing in a positive way, I'm like, you know what? Too true, bestie, too true. So I think that it really depends on the day. And I'm interested to see what more information we get. But like I said, I have a lot of theories there.
Wasn't Bad Batch supposed to do that?
Well, that was my problem, was that it didn't, we got a little bit of information, but not enough.
The thing is, like, but once you address the nightmare, once you address the mystery, you gotta dig into it. You gotta tell me
100%.
exactly how the blue spirit in the reactor traveled onto like a pickled entity where Snoke was held and flushed. Like, I want every single detail. Once you let that cat out of the bag, I need every detail how that cat
you
out
gotta.
of
Well,
the bag.
clearly you haven't read 500 Wikipedia articles, 3 books, 2 miniseries, 1 video game, and a mobile tie-in.
Before you respond to that, Jared, I'm going to bring in 2 more here. I'm going to bring in Pat and Harith.
Hello.
Look at all these beautiful faces of everybody.
All right, Jared, go for it.
If I may, and I will say off the top, JJ, that is, I too am in the camp of I want every single detail documented, because I find the cosmic horror of the Emperor's Return to be deeply fascinating.
Yeah.
It is something that I find incredibly haunting and thematically resonant with the rest of so much of what Star Wars represents. On the topic, and I know it's something that's kind of brought up in jest and something that is kind of joked about, but that whole, like, you need this book and this show and this game and this mobile game and this zine handed out at Star Wars Celebration 8 years ago. Like, I know we all like to joke about that. Personally, I'm firmly in the camp that, like, in terms of like what a normal person fan who isn't in the weeds and in the trenches like all of us, people
a
with
casual enjoyer. That's what I like to call them.
I see the movies, I watch the Baby Yoda show type people.
Sounds amazing. I wish I was there.
I was literally gonna say that. I was gonna say that.
Amazing.
The
Get
people
me out of
who
here.
chosen peace. That I do think there's enough in the movie. I think there's enough presented to just be like, cloning, dark science, secrets only the Sith knew. Okay, we see the world. We see this vast cloning operation. I'll kill you. I've died before. Like, I I'm able to buy that, and I think it's similar to what Emma was saying. I've always been of the mind that Star Wars is a fairy tale that happens to take place in space. Like, I've never gotten hung up on the hard science of it all. So I'm like, yeah, like, evil is created and resurrected all the time. I think it's incredibly resonant that, you know, the Empire as a body distilled into one individual with the Emperor has always been meant to represent like the authoritarian fascism that we've seen, you know, the real world over Nazi Germany, the American Empire, all of these things. That so much of the sequel trilogy is about legacy. It is about the rate at which things change and stay the same, kind of staying neck and neck at all times. So this idea that, yes, you vanquished this evil, of course it's going to come back, and it is the people holding on for dear life to maintain that power who will always be the godhead of it. And I love Palpatine's return in that capacity. If I had the keys to the castle, would I have teed this up all the way back in The Force Awakens? Absolutely, I would have.
Yeah.
And that's not right there. What you just said, right there.
That's the
Create that
problem.
connective tissue. That's the problem right there.
But you know, and I love it because I'm watching my girlfriend side with everybody but me, and I think it's hilarious because we have this argument all the time. We do. We got into like a 30-minute screamer in a Walmart parking lot over Palpatine's return and Ben Solo's redemption. A play for Screamer. It was about.
Can I be her friend? What's her name?
Taylor, that'd be her, Quicksilver Girl. But yeah. So I've always been partial to this idea that like, evil, you can purge evil as many times as you want to attempt to. It is going to come back, and it is going to come back in a way that is going to be eerily similar to the last way we faced it. I remember back in ye old 2020, you know, when Trump lost the election, and I saw more posts than I could ever count in my life saying like, oh, everybody's celebrating like it's Endor at the end of Return of the Jedi. And to every single one of those posts, I replied, did you see the 3 movies after that? It's going to come back. It's going to get worse. It's going to come back. It's going to be worse. And, you know, we see that play out in the narrative. We see that play out in real life. So I am partial to the idea of his return. I want relentless documentation of it because I find it fascinating, because I find it so eerie, and again, there's a cosmic horror to it that I find deeply fascinating, and I'm prepared to defend even against my dear love.
But why attach Rey to it? Why does she have to suffer for it? I'm exhausted of nobody being bothered by the explicit or casual misogyny of this film, with Rose, with Rey, with even Leia.
Yeah,
which is hot take. But like, no,
don't even get me started.
It bothers me.
I'm gonna ask 2 questions. One is just a funny question. The second one is a serious question.
Yes.
So what if instead of Ben Solo saying it to Rey, he says it to Finn? He's like, "You're a Palpatine."
That would be unhinged. But also, I would like to see how the movie plays out. I want to see how that avenue plays out. That sounds unhinged, but
it is time to end it all.
No, JJ, no.
It would be.
You're gonna hit them with the "I lost the Star Wars."
It's
just my way to show off my Calicas's lightsaber. That's all.
My boy. I don't want to speak ahead of the people who just joined, but if I may respond to what JJ said briefly as I can muster. I think that, and the criticism of the backseat treatment that Rose Tico got speaks for itself. I have no retort for that. And obviously I'm not the one to comment on the kind of casually most likely unintended like misogyny in a lot of those elements there. Narratively, thematically, you know, I've always subscribed to it's like poetry, it rhymes, you know, big tapestry, whatever view of Star Wars. And that I again don't mind Rey being a descendant of the Emperor, because I think it adds a fascinating final trial for the journey we see her going in the previous 2 films. That it is, you know, oh, I'm going to sit this adventure out because I'm Rey from the armpit of the galaxy, right? And then it turns into, you know, I need to understand my place in all this, to coming to the understanding that, like, her foil throughout these movies being this person cursed by his legacy, and the way that is explored to then invert it onto Rey as, okay, you wanted a legacy, you've grown beyond it, actually here's your legacy, and seeing her overcome it and the way that it coalesces into that story about found, like the button, in my opinion, the bow on the found family element that goes to conclude with family is not the blood running through your veins. It goes so much deeper than that. It's so much bigger than just you're a descendant of a Palpatine, whatever, all of that stuff, for lack of a better word, that it coalesces in a rejection of the legacy that she is meant, in quotation marks, to inherit, and defers to the one that she chooses for herself. And I do find beauty in that.
I want to. Sorry, May, you go first.
Okay, before we're gonna. I was like, I see several people want to respond to that. So I'll go May first, then Tate. I don't know, JJ, if you had something you want to say to that, but May first.
No, I already spoke.
No, we're getting into like other like big themes like misogyny, and then like when you talk about found family, like that's a very queer like concept, and I always think of characters like Rey, and then like Scotty Holiday did this amazing video. If you haven't seen it on Cal Kestis's queerness as like more putting the queerness on him as opposed to, him being queer. But I think that none of those things that you mentioned have to happen, like, or none of those things that you said, like, they can also happen without the Palpatine of it all. Like, I think that her destiny is what she's supposed to be, could be done the exact same way with Dark Rey, but she's like, don't be afraid of who you are, which is like your darker self. You and Kylo have this dyad, like that you don't need Palpatine for that. That could be enough of a stain on her, or who am I in this journey to kind of do it. That being said, like I really loved the idea of Rey Nobody. I do like Rey Skywalker. Like, I'm not gonna like say that I don't, but I'm very much in JJ's boat where I think like the Rise of Skywalker was well, just so much happened so quickly, and it was just really impossible to mostly even really know what's going on, like Briar said. Like, so it was like hard to follow. I've had to watch it several times, and every time I'm still like very disappointed kind of in the way some of these things worked out. And did Project Necromancer help explain a lot of that? Absolutely, yes. Do people need to go that would only watch the movies and have to go watch, a show that they might not necessarily watch? Well, they should, but like, are they gonna? It's just, it goes back to like, how deep in the lore do you want to be as a fan? So that's just my take on that.
And may I add one thing?
Oh, you go first, JJ.
Because I'm gonna lose this thought if I don't share it. One of the, I guess you could take the sequel trilogy as almost as an inversion of the original trilogy. I think that's where both J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson were kind of drawing from, with some references to the prequels, specifically to Phantom Menace. So I do think Phantom Menace is like a Walmart copy of A New Hope. I stand by that. TLJ is trying to mimic Empire Strikes Back and some of the Return of the Jedi aspects. So I always take Luke in The Empire Strikes Back finding out who his father is. And that is a shocking reveal for a character that causes so much conflict that he has to resolve. For Rey, she finding out that she's a nobody, that is an internal conflict for her that she has to resolve, because she's been seeking that legacy and she's being told, no, then what? And then the Rise of Skywalker doing its pissing contest with the Last Jedi, he's like, nah, it's fine. You got legacy. It's all good. Fanboys won't question your strength in the Force anymore because Magic Grandpa. I am so sick of it that we had a female character, a main character in Star Wars universe who was strong in the Force, and then I have to defend her strength in Force for the rest of my life, or as long as Star Wars exists, because 5 years later, we're still doing this. We're still doing Rey Palpatine, Rey Skywalker, and that's not going to end ever. Maybe at some point, because prequel trilogy has sort of aged better, I would say. It's more loved now than it was. I remember those days. We were in the trenches. So I am hoping that
.net days.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it ages better in the next decade or so. But for me personally, just how much I felt that Rey was let down as a main female character of Star Wars, that is a Toothpaste, you are not putting in the tube back for me. I'm sorry. Is the Rey movie going to fix that? Maybe. But I am so jaded by Ben Solo's death, by her ending on Tatooine, on a planet that means jack fuck shit to her, on a droid that's not hers, taking a last name because she didn't have a relationship with Luke, only briefly. We are told in The Rise of Skywalker that her and Leia have this connection. And all of a sudden I'm going to be like, oh, it's fine. It's a found family trope. All good. No, I like stories. I like character work. I don't want to be told. I want moments to feel earned. None of that in that film feels earned to me. So I'm sorry. I'm getting, getting a little hot on it.
You're good. Briar and Tate, you both have been on here for like the entire time, so I'm gonna give you a break if you want it, and then swap you out.
Before you give me a little break, I would
go for
like to say a few things. I've been taking notes over here because I'm like, I'm gonna let y'all speak, but I don't remember what I have to say. So I'm just gonna come down the list.
I have never been more full of fear in my entire life than right now.
So, one thing, right? Like when Emma, you were saying that like sometimes when I hear people talk about it, I'm like, I love it or I hate it, right? My problem is they won't commit. Okay, commit to a camp. Commit to something. The reason why Project Necromancer doesn't feel like it's working is because we're getting there. I'm a DM, so I do play teacher RPGs, DM. I'm a writer. These things are things that matter to me. How to tell stories, especially how to tell collaborative stories, which is Star Wars is collaborative because you're passing it on to different writers. So I think Dungeons and Dragons teacher RPGs are an excellent example of how to tell stories collaboratively. Yes, and it's like they're like no, but or absolutely no, just blocking that off. And it doesn't feel like there's this like cohesion from story to story to story because they won't commit to which way they want to go to explain it or to lean into the mysticism. Because going on to my next point about the recurring Palpatine as like a villain of like how fascism is sort of like horrific and the fact that it keeps on coming back up. And I think that like part of like when I was leaning towards like Project Necromancer going to another point, I feel like almost to bring into like the horror of Palpatine, that Palpatine should come back another time, which is a hot take. I know that's a hot take that Palpatine should come back another time. I think that because at this point it's like, what is keeping Palpatine dead this time? The fact that Rey did an X, and then what about that was unique in comparison for him blowing up in a Death Star? Like, what is different this time that made it different? Like, I think one of the things about like poetry in Star Wars is that like if you're thinking about like a sonnet, I'm sorry, this is my English nerd coming out.
I love it.
There's a turn in a sonnet. So the beginning of the sonnet, right, it has one theme, and then at the turn of the sonnet, it changes the themes that were brought up at the beginning of the sonnet and changes your perception of what happened at the first part of the poem. Because sometimes poetry rhymes, but sometimes there's bad poetry, right?
Thank you.
like and Mike is like, yeah, it rhymes, but it sucks. It's a bad poem.
I fucking love it.
And like another thing about like the midichlorians, right? The midichlorian count, like things like that. Also, then you have Ahsoka and Sabine Wren's journey with the Force that throws all that shit out the window, and it contradicts all of that. So what the fuck did you just waste all my time with the midichlorians for if we could just train really, really hard to become Force sensitive? That's I'm just like, what's happening here? Again, commit to a camp. And that's sort of like, and also just like someone said, like the sexism and like racism is like not intentional. I don't remember who said that, but like I feel like Star Wars fans do too much legwork for this $1 billion company. They have access to some of the greatest creators and writers on the planet, right? And Star Wars fans do too much work. All the people in the room, all the people in the chat. I'm gonna look you in the camera. You do too much work for Lucasfilm. You do not get paid, as we said at the beginning of the stream. We do not get paid to explain this shit. That's their job. Okay, and that is like the end of my list. We are too forgiving. This $1 billion company that should know fucking better how to do this, because there's 1 million of us online.
Thank you.
Who are so creative and are so intelligent, and the fact that they seem to like miss the mark constantly. At one time, it becomes a pattern that we cannot excuse anymore.
Hire more nerds. Hire more nerds.
Hire more nerds. Be more diverse. Like it's not that hard. There are there are more of us, as Chris likes
No,
to
it
say.
absolutely 100%.
And that's the end of my list. And I can go on break now. You can kick me out.
Subtle plug for the There Are More of Us show.
Yeah.
What a way for Briar to end on.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it.
Well, not end. Just take a break, get some water.
Okay,
You
all
know,
right.
you put in
If-
that leg work.
if I could offer something, I agree with a lot that has been said, right here, especially about this. I have this theory about, I guess, like the 3 trilogies and how, like, because everyone always talks about like Anakin was the chosen one and this, that, and the other thing. I sort of subscribe to like a 3-fold fulfillment of that prophecy. And so in that respect, I think that I really do appreciate Briar bringing up the point, like what is different about this time of Palpatine staying dead. I think that is so
stakes. Do we know them? What are
yeah,
stakes?
no, 100%. And I
It's those
think
things
that
Trump sells.
and so I think that like when we bring in, because once again, like I said, my interest is in a lot of the like mystical and sort of religious elements. When we think about it in the context of like Mortis, and we have, you know, like the 3 sections there, we have 3 trilogies of 3 films. My idea here is like I said, the 3-fold fulfillment of a prophecy of Anakin, Luke, and Leia, and then Rey and Ben. So because like we can't, because now that we've thrown in the dyad to add that angle, it's sort of like
he's dead. It's fine. We can move on.
I know, but it's I think
I'm
that
sorry.
that's a really
Forgive
I
me.
think that's a really interesting question
I hate
though.
it.
Like what? How does Palpatine stay dead this time? Because I think that the point of like having this resurgence of the fascist personage, the representation, be recurring, I think is a really important because we can see that with clarity with our own eyes, happening right now, being live streamed to our phones at any given moment. And I think that's where they lose us, is the stakes. The thing that I sort of disagree with when someone says, oh, well, Palpatine coming back like ruins Anakin's sacrifice, Anakin and Vader's sacrifice. No, I just think that the fulfillment was incomplete. Because not only do you have to defeat the fascism evil, you have to actively reject it as well, which I think is what was powerful about that moment that Rey had in Rise of Skywalker. There are moments of that film that I really like. There are moments of that film that live rent-free in my brain. There are also moments of that film that I'm like, I'm sorry, but who wrote this? The fact that Ben Solo says exactly one word after redemption. I know Briar and JJ are ready to roast me right now because they're both just like, I can't do this. I think that sort of, for me, what rings true is that it's not only rejecting the Chaco's not wrong.
I don't believe it. What again?
Because Finn said it in the Rise of Skywalker novelization. He's just like, yeah, there's not coming back. No, see, that's it. Finn's gonna get one thing in that movie / book, and that's gonna be it.
Yeah, I think that those are important questions, and I think that's sort of where does the Project Necromancer information end up mattering in the context of, is it different this time? I personally think it is, but I would also love to see Briar's idea about it, another resurgence. I mean, I think there's something to enjoy about every Star Wars. There's something to enjoy about all of them. Is there a lot of absolutely nonsense, bad things? Correct. Yes. Yes.
Sorry, if I may, sorry, Chris,
Oh, yeah.
Chris has been trying to exile me to the nether regions of the force for about 20 minutes.
All right, Brian,
I'm ready to wrap up and say my piece, and then poor Pat and Cole have been so patient, so I want to let them have a turn as well. But to kind of build off of what everyone's been saying, I've got so many notes, guys. I've been writing like 3 pages of notes.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Let's get Kate's essay out here.
I want to condense it because everyone's got to have their turn. But basically, the crux of it for me, I can't insert myself too deep into this conversation in some ways because all the beautiful rhetoric that's been happening for the past couple of people, it's been a very gendered topic. I can't speak to all of that stuff, so I'll bring it back to what I'm more consciously aware of and able to engage with, which is, again, it's the lore and the narrative debate. It's the nature of that. And kind of what Jared was saying, I know you didn't mean it, and I know you didn't mean it, but the way you said, actually, now you're a Palpatine, that specific diction is the through line of J.J. Abrams' narrative process. Actually,
oh my
God. Actually, it's this. Now it's this. It's not even, as much as it's a bit, it's also something he's genuinely admitted to. He calls it the mystery box style of storytelling, where he loves to leave open-ended, unanswered questions. That's his structure and that's his approach. And you pair that with the Star Wars fandom. Look at my username. I'm Star Wars Facts Guy. I'm raised on the idea of wanting to know as much as I can about all these amazing things. I love that I know what every single person in the cantina in A New Hope is doing. I know their names. I know their backstories. I love that. The problem is, and I think it's what Emma was saying so beautifully. Emma was so brilliant. The idea of fill in the blanks. What a phenomenal way to surmise the sequel trilogy and the oscillating and the wrestling between J.J. Abrams, Rian Johnson's studio, fan expectation, the whole wrestling between the two of them. And I think it kind of plays itself into the first 2 trilogies. George Lucas is very candid on how it is the monomyth. It is Campbellian in structure. It is archetypes. It is not serious. It is not meant to be serious. The sequel trilogy doesn't know where to take itself. It's not trying to be the prequels because the prequels were stinky and bad, guys, and there were too much politics and speaking. We got to divorce ourselves and disenfranchise violently from the prequels. But then it also wants to be the original trilogy in wrapping paper and in table dressing, without the archetypes, without the character tropes. So what you have is this weird experiment where they keep trying to fill in the blanks to appease every crowd. And it doesn't work because you're basically left reading alphabet soup. That's the
problem. I do want to say before we do there, I did bring Luke on. Luke, say your quick piece before I want to respond to something Tate said, and then ask a question to the group.
First of all, I am the real pod one. Let's get that clear. First of all. Second of all, Tate, this is why everybody needs to pay attention to Tate, because this man has all of like the nuance and everything, and I love hearing him, and we love hearing Tate talk about certain things and stuff like that. So yeah, but I just wanted to and happy Pride Month, everybody.
Happy Pride.
Woo! Yeah. Happy Pride.
Okay.
Everybody should be able to be represented and shit, because that's just how
and shit.
No, not in shit.
Well said. Well said.
Everybody poops, guys.
No matter what. Oh God, that was so bad. At least it wasn't as bad as when Chaco had.
No.
That was a nightmare. But anyway.
All right. So responding to one thing Tate said, I do feel like J.J. Abrams gets too much hate for some of these decisions. Hold on, that I know are from the studio, or that I not know, but that I believe are from the studio. So
I think, or because Carrie died. I think that definitely had an
that as well.
That threw a wrench in a lot of things. I think because it prevented them from taking the story in any direction beyond the footage that they had. And for me personally, obviously, It's not
Sorry,
going to
I'm
work here on the live stream. But it was, like a really difficult thing because I think their hands were tied in that respect. But also I think they could have done better.
Were they?
Anyway.
Well,
No, but that's what I mean is that it's you when someone has passed, like what I don't know what could have been done.
I get it. Yeah, I understand.
I think they could have done better.
Could have changed the ending to The Last Jedi.
They certainly could have. I don't know. Anyway, continue on. I'm so sorry. Continue on.
No, you're good. So the reason why I said that I think J.J. Abrams didn't make some of these decisions is because if we look at I think it's 17 days before the Rise of Skywalker came out, Variety released an article talking to Chris Terrio and J.J. Abrams. And they were talking about things we were going to see in the film. And they were talking about, we're going to be touching on everybody's origin in the film. We're going to learn about Rey. We're going to learn about Poe. We're going to learn about Finn. I guess we touched on Poe's origin, even though there was already book and comic about that. We're not going to talk about that. But we didn't get Finn's origin. And you don't come out and say that 2.5 weeks before the film if you don't think it's going to be in there.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's because Terrio is an incompetent writer. He's proved time and time again that he's more obsessed with metaphor and analogy than actual script structure.
Hey, Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice.
That's an example.
It's hilarious.
He did the Ghost Dad twice. He did the Batman versus Superman and Rise of Skywalker.
It's so funny in the little Discord we've all been in the staging area for. I made a joke that Chris Terrio notwithstanding, that the Rise of Skywalker for me is Star Wars' answer to BVS, in that I am split perfectly down the middle of shit I love and shit I hate. That I'm I kind of just my brain just takes a screenshot when I try to watch either movie. That it's I don't know what to do with myself. It's like, oh, this, what the fuck is that? Thank you for Terrio jokes.
I apologize for interjecting once again, but now we're on 30 minutes of Chris trying to get me out of here. So let me say one final piece. And then I want to hear from Pat. I want to hear from Cole. I'm going to hop into the stream and watch you guys because I know there's so much.
Same here. I have one more thought and I'm out.
So if I can put a closing thought on everything, and I love, believe me, I'd love to sit here and shit all over the Rise of Skywalker.
Yes.
I want to bring it back. I want to bring it back to more of a structured breakdown, a structured analysis, and look at my notes. And what I want to leave it with is the way in which Star Wars needs to engage with supplementary material. I think the culture that's been fostered over the past 5 years is that Star Wars is a homework franchise. I think as much as I love The Mandalorian season 1 and 2, I think The Mandalorian nowadays comes across as an apology letter for the sequels more than a genuine story that is actually trying to engage with. I think the way to approach Star Wars going forward, if you want to use a fun analogy that you can share around the dinner table, think of it like eating out at a restaurant, right? You've got your main dish and you can pair it with a wine and it will be really good and it will enhance it. You've got your prequel trilogies. You can pair it with the Clone Wars and Brotherhood by Mike Chen and it will be amazing. But if the main dish is underwhelming and you buy other things to substitute, that doesn't fix the fact that the main dish was underwhelming. You're substituting your enjoyment with something else to enhance your overall experience. And I think that's the problem. And I think going forward, I hope there's more of a conscious effort to kind of make that main dish real good. Think, for example, again, Acolyte streaming June 4th only on Disney+. There's a wonderful one-shot comic about Kalnaka that's coming up by Caban Scott. I'm sure you can watch The Acolyte and just enjoy that Kalnaka is an outsider and he lives in the forest. But if you really wanted to, you can read this comic and it'll make you feel even better. The idea of Star Wars and supplementary material, they'll never be divorced from each other. But if we can embrace that in a positive way, in a, wow, I really enjoyed this. Is there more? I really enjoy Jedi. Yeah. Is there a video game where I can be a Jedi? Wow, I really like Clone Troopers. Is there a show about them? That's the step forward. That's where we need to charge. That's
then
me.
there-
Send me to the nether regions.
Thank you, Tate. I do want you to stick around at least in the Discord while you're in the
I'll
stream.
stick around
I
in
do
the
have
Discord,
a question that I want everybody that's been on here to
Lord.
answer.
Oh dear.
Luke, before you go, hold on, Luke. I gotta.
Luke's stuck
Okay.
here.
So the question
Welcome to the
that
Thunderdome, Luke.
I want to
I know.
ask
You're in it now.
is based off of something that was sent in by Jimmy K. Foe. He could not be here. I'm going to pull it up because he makes an interesting point. I think this is the right one. Yep, this is it. I gotta skip to it though.
Apologies for not being. They eventually create this like weird alien. I don't know whether he's humanoid and Kaminoan. I don't know if he has.
He's talking about Snoke right
I don't
now.
really know, but that's how Snoke is then created, and it helps the Emperor. So that's option one. Option two is they actually do what Palpatine says in the Clone Wars to do with the Zilla Beast. But the reason why they use midichlorians is actually not for using the literal Force, but they realize that a clone like Omega is more independent, much smarter, and the idea is to create a being that's much smarter, and potentially we could see Force using soldiers. Maybe Project Necromancer actually helped the troopers that Thrawn has. Like, there's so many of these little intricate things, and I think that the biggest thing is the reason why we haven't been told it is because we are going to be, and it's going to be some form of build-up as opposed to, oh, let's just start with a Death Star, let's just start with another one. And I think that that could be really fascinating. It could also be like really dumb, like, oh, Project Necromancer was, just cloning people, and here's some armor that's still a beast, and then that's it, which would kind of be dull, and that's why it would go lower than a 7 and 10. But more than likely, there's something deeper to it, and I believe that that's why we don't know everything yet. And
so what do you all think about that? Because Breyer did touch on this earlier, that like this has got to be something more than just maybe there's more to it than just bringing Palpatine back, right? So what if they do continue forward with Project Necromancer in a non-Palpatine related setting? And I think we do get that in a little bit in Mando season 3, because that's what Moff Gideon is doing. Is that something you would be interested in seeing, getting away from the Palpatine of it all?
Getting away.
Oh yeah. So
I don't want to start off with Pat, then Harith, then Luke, since they were the new words on there.
So if anyone knows me, I am obsessed with Darth Plagueis. And Darth Plagueis is one of my all-time favorite novels, and this is why I love Project Necromancer. It's because it gives us that foothold into Sith alchemy and Sith science that we can see they can do anything with. And I think, hey, Palpatine was using it to his game, but as he's doing this, as he's giving it to these moths, these people to do these science and stuff, he's also he's publicizing these little bits of Sith alchemy, and he's making these out. So even if Palpatine is gone, these Sith secrets they're not fully out there. No one knows everything like Palpatine did, but they're out there. People can use them and twist them to the whole thing, and that gives a whole new shape to the galaxy if these secrets are more out there. And that's something that has to deal with, and Rey has to and her students has to deal with, that these secrets that were once only wanted to deal with the Sith are out there now, and any Darksider can use them. You don't have to be a Sith. They're more accessible, and they can cause a whole bunch of new problems to mess with the galaxy. And it also gives us, going back, to what I said, if Project Necromancer was just for to bring back Palpatine, where does that, and we're just focusing on the middle parts, where does that leave us in the future and stuff like that? Well, we can also go back in the past. We're going back to Alkalite, and on the Padawans, there was talk about so much time. Plagueis was like a huge chunk of things that they were talking about, and that gives us like little hints we can talk about. Because like, where are these things that the foundations for Project Necromancer coming from when Palpatine implemented? Where does it see like doing that? How does the Sith alchemy and Sith science play in with the High Republic? And that's why I'm excited for it. We're getting more Sith lore than we have ever gotten before, and I want that because we know the Jedi. We know the bare bones of the Jedi. We understand who the Jedi are. We understand their tenets and how they use the Force. We have an idea of what the Sith are, but they're cloak and mystery. And I'm happy to leave them cloak and mystery, but I would also love to delve into them because the Sith just have so much things, and there's so many characters we don't know, characters that could be created, and we can explore new themes with.
Yeah, bring back Mara Jade. But yes, thank you, man. Also, yeah,
David is shaking right now.
now I Darth Plagueis, I phenomenal book. Love it. Love it.
Don't you
Do
dare,
it, Chris. Do it. Do it.
Chris,
Don't rip into it, man.
I'm
Please do
just
it.
saying, I love Darth Plagueis as a book. You know, like I think it came out. What was it, like
2012? It was one of
Yeah.
the last
Yeah, it
books. Before Disney bought Lucasfilm.
Yeah,
Legends certainly went out on a high note.
It did. You had that book. You had like Star Wars Ocean 11 with Han, Lando, and Chewie. You had like the final adventure of Luke, Han, and not like final, like they all died, but like, you know, those last books. Like Legends went out on a high note. Went out with a bang, baby.
All right.
Harris, go for it.
Honestly, I think Pat actually put the nail straight on the head with what I wanted with this. Like, we can't keep going back into the past and keep doing the whole like, oh, we look at these like mysterious clone like tubes. Oh, what's in there? And just like keep teasing that. So I like the idea of like, why don't we just go forward and deal with the acolytes of the beyond and like how they have to pick up the new pieces of what remained, because it's like, again, like what Jared was saying earlier, like the darkness always rises and the light to meet it. So it's like that theme of the Last Jedi of like, instead of like doing typical Sith and typical Jedi things, it's now these newer pieces of that. And again, it's like, because it's like with Rise, like the acolytes of the beyond are not dead. Like, yes, Palpatine is dead. Yes, the Sith fleet is gone, but like the whole idea of like dark side followers picking up that would be an incredible idea to explore in the New Jedi Order. So I think let's just like leave like the whole Project Necromancer thing. Like for the most part in the past, we can do maybe like a Tales of the Sith episode with Plagueis and Palpatine and being like it's like, oh yeah, I went into clone bodies by putting my mind in there. Like that's like, let's just leave that in the past. Let's just move on. Let's just keep going forward.
I'm gonna fucking disrespectfully disagree with you, sir. Because let's be real here.
Jerry.
Okay,
Jerry.
So here's my thoughts. Like, I've been paying attention to almost everything that has been going on. Okay, here's my thoughts real quick with Project Necromancer. I have been very clear with how I feel about Palpatine in the sequel trilogy. For me, it comes down to it makes sense. He is the biggest of the bad throughout the entire saga. He is. From
patient.
First. So that's so good.
Oh my god, that's so great.
Oh my god, that is so good.
Speak on it, Briar. Speak on it. Say it.
Anyway. So
It's not all bad, guys. Come on.
Luke doing a fucking wormhole is the worst thing I have ever seen in my life. That's terrible.
But moved it.
I didn't say it's all good either.
Stupid.
Hold on.
Stupid.
The hero has like a worm thing going on in the Legends.
No.
No, wormhole.
No, he
wormhole.
Wormhole.
Wormhole. Because Legends. Why?
Anyway, back to my whole point.
Had a Super Saiyan form in Legends.
Yes. It's not. No, we don't need to talk about that. That's like, bleh. Anyway, So I like what they tried to do with Palpatine because it makes sense narratively, at least to me. It makes sense to bring him back and have him be the overarching villain throughout the entire saga. Was the execution great? Absolutely not. It's not great. It's not great. It could have been worked on. They could have done more things. However, with Necromancer moving like this point forward, and hear me out, I think if we don't get Plagueis in Acolyte, I think there's a possibility that they could bring him back as a foil to Rey. Don't ask me how.
What? I'm gonna be honest.
Why?
I never need to see
Why?
Plagueis again. Like
Plagueis?
I'm cool with the Plagueis, the Plagueis novel, and like nobody's gonna take that away from me. So I'm cool with it. I don't need anything else. Would I love to see it? Sure. Do I need it? Absolutely not.
I don't need it.
God,
I don't need it. I
don't
want
to hear
it.
the word Plagueis
But-
ever freaking again.
But like my thing is
I want
like
it.
what does bringing Plagueis and New Jedi Order bring to the table? Like it's
Yeah.
just like it's just like we need to like move on from the idea of the Sith keep returning. Like we can have dark side force
they
users,
do.
but like we need
But
to
you
like
just said
move
it.
on from that as a whole
But-
after Rise.
And
I-
Acolyte's gonna, I have a feeling
hold
Acolyte's gonna
on.
do that. That's
Hold
gonna,
on,
Acolyte's
Jared-
gonna
Jared-
do that.
But the thing is like what you just said, Harriet.
Yeah.
The light, like the darkness rises to meet the light. That's the Sith.
No.
Whenever there's a
No.
Jedi, there's a
No.
It doesn't mean that they're
I
Sith.
think-
Hear me
What
out.
if-
Hear me
what-
out. Hear me
what
out.
about, like,
Hear me out.
Martian
What if?
Irrelevant?
I love the fact that I've come in here and completely just fucked this whole thing up.
If
I'm
the
riding with Luke, man. I'm
No, Luke,
riding with
I have
Luke.
so
We're in
much
these
thoughts
trenches
right now.
together, dog.
What Nick just
Hold on.
said in the chat.
Hold on. So, okay, what if it's to keep it on a Project Necromancer tie-in, since we have such an underdevelopment of the criminal world, what if we had some dark side criminals that got a hold of some of the technology from Project Necromancer to build up their kind of like forces and troops, and that's the dark side force we have to see Rey and the New Republic deal with?
I would-
because that
I
you
could
know.
get
Somehow
behind that
Plagueis
because
return. Damn it, Chris.
No.
Go
So,
the original.
hear me out. So hear me out. I like that idea because then it brings in like the Nihil. They take that philosophy of the Nihil
David.
and God dang it. Now it is becoming an episode of Pod Ones, like OG Pod Ones, where we pull up the comments and then I get distracted. But anyway, like I think that's I like Chris's take here on that because then you can grab from what the Nihil did. They're not force sensitive, but they are evil. So it's like take that kind of piratey, kind of like we don't give a shit about what's going on. We're just going to be chaotic. And I think that is something that Rey's Jedi Order could have to deal with. Like we've seen it before, but it's been how by that point from Rey to the end of Phase 3 of the High Republic. That's what? Well over 250 years, right?
Yeah.
What about
Yeah, just about.
people
you're
who aren't
lowballing
force
it even,
sensitive
yeah.
just in general, like
That
the
too.
idea of
Mhm.
people just like regular humans being anti-force users and you know building up
The
their weapons
use
with or
on
without.
Vong.
No.
Don't.
If I may,
hold on.
Sorry, Luke. Sorry.
Hold on. May was
Let
saying
me
something. May,
finish,
go ahead.
I apologize.
Oh, no,
I'm
I-
sorry,
May.
I mean, I'm like getting off topic because this is now like has nothing to do with Project Necromancer, but I feel like Rey's enemies are going to be regular people. Like, I think that we haven't seen that yet in Star Wars, where it's just
Star Wars theory.
anti-magic or like anti-force users.
Very much giving. Oh, I literally was opening my mouth to say Legend of Korra.
Korra.
And the,
Yeah.
what are they called?
I'm in the season 1.
Yeah,
Please
like
don't spoil
Legend
it.
okay,
Okay, all right,
Or
yeah,
like
everybody's
Dragon Age
No.
Inquisition, like
My
Dragon Age
goodness.
Inquisition too, how they're like against like the mages and the like. I feel like that would be a really interesting thing where like the Republic is just really done with like magic. They're scared that's like satanic panic. You know, they're like and then
Oh.
she just has to
Mhm.
deal with like why she like the Jedi deserve to exist and the persecution again. I mean, this would if I was writing it,
Can
that's what I would do.
Can I just
Oh, that's
give your
great.
Can I
It's
just
actually
give
really
your
great.
brain a little kiss? Can I just give your brain a little kiss? That
That was great.
All right.
I am going to be
One
stewing on that for
thing,
ages.
Emma, before you go, because I
No.
do want to transition. Luke, can you go into the Discord and prepare people to get back on there?
Yes.
All right.
Goodbye.
I'm gonna
Now
sing
I am
a
back.
piece too, and you can kick me out into the
Well,
ether of the internet.
Before you go, I'm gonna add Pet back in here and Nick back in here.
Okay.
So Emma, go ahead.
Yeah, I can you remind me of the question? I'm a bear of very little brain, and the ADHD is ADHDing.
So it
Bear
was, would you be okay with Project Necromancer going
Yes,
away from
sorry.
Palpatine somewhere else?
Yes. Because of my thoughts about the connection between like the body and the spirit as far as the Force goes, I think that has some really interesting implications for example, giving people Force sensitivity. And something else that I mused on was like if they were trying to stabilize a formula in order to perhaps increase someone's Force sensitivity through increasing their midichlorians, was Palpatine perhaps going to use that formula to increase the M count for the Inquisitors? Because that sort of takes us into like super soldier territory, which I think is something that we haven't really explored. I know. It was something that I thought was maybe interesting because you have, all of these Jedi on the run and sort of like how do you come up to meet them? That was sort of my thought, but I would love to see the implications of it outside of somehow Palpatine returned, because I think because of the teeny tiny amount of information that we have so far, we could like open it up to literally anything. The implications could be literally anything. And I think that is so fun, but also now that I'm seeing the faces of everybody in the chat as I'm saying that, I'm like, I don't know, man. Maybe they're gonna mess it up, so maybe I don't want that at all.
I'm into Force Abomination to create super soldiers.
Use on Vong. Use on Vong.
Chris,
Before
I
we go
swear.
further,
I hate to use on Bong with a passion, and Chris knows this.
Yeah, I'm one of the few people that love to use on Vong, and that's fine. I'll stand on my hill alone.
I just think the concept. I just think the concept of like injecting someone with like what they have created to be like get the Force quick formula. I know you guys don't like it, but I think
no. I'm talking about Kate Skywalker.
Yeah, we're
That's
all
okay.
for Kate
I
Skywalker.
just can't read. It's fine. I just think the concept of that is perhaps interesting when you consider it in the context of like the will of the Force as we understand it, because it's outside of the will of the Force. But I don't know, that could go to a really weird religious place also.
Sorry.
I don't know. It could be kind of cool, but it also say hi.
Hi.
But it also I don't know. I just think that's something that we could explore. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that there are lots of possibilities, but also I don't trust them. I don't trust them to do a good job.
Before we go further, JJ, if you want to wrap up and let people know where they can find you.
Oh, yes. You can find me on TikTok under Lady Dragon JJ. I talk mostly about the Song of Ice and Fire, but I've been diverging into anime a lot lately. Like, I'm an anime girl now. How'd that happen? I don't know. So I'm watching Cowboy Bebop right now. I'm on 4th episode. I can love it. It's great. It's a nice refresher after my nightmare run with Attack on Titan. So, but yeah, you can. I have pretty spicy opinions on a lot of things. I don't like the Rise of Skywalker. I don't like Rey Palpatine. I don't like Clone Palpatine. I don't like Project Necromancer. I want it done. I want it over with. That movie is not good. And essentially, I can sum it up to creative bankruptcy is a pathway to many unnatural powers some would consider mid. and I want to be done with it. And let's move the fuck on already. I'm looking forward to Rey movie, literally setting all of that aside, and we do some magical shit that's not going to be explored or explained or give me any science on it. I don't care that there's noise in space, and I don't care about cloning science and biology of any of that. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for having me here with these amazing people. This was incredible. I feel very honored to be in this group. So everybody in the chat, hilarious. I love you all. Mwah. So I will talk to y'all later. Thank you, Chris, again for including me in this.
No
I
problem.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Bye, guys.
So I would love to jump off real quick about what.
Oh no, go ahead, Pat. Yeah.
Emma, so she was thinking about giving people the Force and super soldiers and stuff. And I love that. I love a thought about like all the different weird and creepy Sith experiments we can get into with that and dark side experiments. But as she's talking, I'm thinking
Because
like,
how would it be corrupted if it's not the will of the Force? Do you know what I mean? Like, what would the corruptions? How would the corruptions manifest? Anyway, continue on.
The Yuuzhan Vong.
If it isn't the will of the Force, then it would throw it into.
Oh yeah, I feel like it's worth saying. Fellow Yuuzhan Vong enjoyer over here.
Oh no, they
You're
go
on the Holy Trinity right now.
The Jedi Order, baby. Yeah, no, I'm right there. Nama Nor, one of my favorite Legends characters. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
so, but like, what happens if you can go the other way with learning how to manipulate midichlorians and take the Force away from someone? We have instances and stuff where you people who are Force sensitives have purposely closed themselves off to the Force. But what happens if you have a Jedi Master like Rey, and they've gone through this journey, the spiritual journey, to understand the Force and their place in the Force, and then all of a sudden you can take that away from them, or take away from these new students who are coming in and they've been lost, and they find connection, and now they're in danger, and that connection is.
We're getting into like Dawn of the Jedi.
It's almost inevitable
weird stuff.
to go down that
stuff.
When you
I know.
These kinds of powers, it's almost inevitable that eventually a story has to come up of someone losing and then regaining that power.
Yes.
As a way of examining the relationship between like these powerful people that can use the Force versus the layman who cannot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to tackle a concept like that without it feeling automatically derivative, just because every story involving powerful people, someone's lost that power and had to gain it back, and it's hard to find a new lesson to learn there, without retreading old ground.
I totally agree. That is a great point, and I am very disappointed in myself that I did not think of it myself. But thank you so much for saying it.
Since the advent of midichlorians, we've been so focused on this relationship between the science and the mystical. And if you can take away through the science of someone's Force sensitive, where does that leave the mystical part? And we can finally get that exploration and that balance, and figure out that balance between the two.
And I think it really goes well with what May was saying, and like that type of pitch of like people like the New Republic being kind of against the Jedi. Because I always like the idea of like Rey's New Jedi Order kind of being separate from all that, of like kind of going back to what they were in like the High Republic, where they're like more separated from the Republic and all that, and they're more they're like independent, like almost like officers, like peacekeepers. So I would like the idea of like what is Pat is saying, what is May is saying, of like people being like, yeah, we're done with the Jedi Order. Like we've seen this cycle like 2 or 3 times.
I mean,
just
they're
move
afraid
on.
of them. It just has to be like a story about fear. I mean, all of these stories are stories about fear, but we haven't looked at it from that perspective yet, which I think would be so cool.
If I may weigh in on the question, because I find it deeply fascinating. First things first, my idea for the villain of the Rey movie is going to piss everybody off. I think it should be Darth Crate, and I'm working on a whole video essay about that. Give me your Rotten Tomatoes.
There we go.
Asherad
hit, baby.
Oh, dude, I ride hard for Asherad. I could talk for hours. But on the topic of should Project Necromancer stay centered on Darth Sidious, and I think that's an interesting question, because I love this idea, a la Moff Gideon, that the people involved with Project Necromancer, because Palpatine is not there to oversee it himself, you have people kind of nickel and diming little elements for themselves, like Gideon kind of hijacking it for his own kind of proto super soldier type project, which I think is really cool and fascinating. The thing that has me say you can have these like spin-offs of Necromancer doing whatever, the core focus of it, in my opinion, works really well centered on the Emperor, because while Palpatine is so crafty, he is a master improviser. When something zigs when it was supposed to zag, he's able to zog and somehow get it all back. The thing that I love about Project Necromancer is that it emphasizes his crucial flaw, that he cannot learn from his own mistakes because of his narcissism.
His hubris.
And his hubris, yes. That, like, again, you look at his grand plan to eliminate the Jedi. Well, use this clone army of fully disposable whatever, and surely that will work just fine. Well, the clone army thing blows up in his face because they set back Project Necromancer a crisp couple decades when they, fuck up Mount Tantus. Cool. But then he says, well, I'm still going to stay with the cloning thing. I'm not going to pivot to a plan B. Okay, well, you could have done that, whatever. This man can't stop building super weapons. Okay, Death Star got blown to hell. Death Star 2, baby, bigger and badder. Okay, that got blown to hell. It's a whole fucking planet now. He has this one track mind of, I'm just going to keep trying it because eventually this will work. So the idea that he can't abandon this project, I'll just keep turning Jedi to the dark side. Surely Maul and Ventress and Vader and the entire Inquisitorius being this pecking order of people who all want to usurp each other. Surely this won't backfire, even though he creates a rival out of Maul. Anakin Skywalker kills him the first time, because he died and got better. That is the sticking point. I've alluded to the arguments that my girlfriend and I have over this, and that is always my sticking point of, he did die.
Are you suggesting that somehow Maul returned?
Somehow Maul returns. Somehow, when you don't have a body, that tends to happen. But so I do love the idea that it is
put ice on it
because
he put trash on it. Is what he did.
It just got dumped in the car.
He just plugged the hole with trash, though, dude. I mean,
just put his Force essence in some rice. He'll be fine. But I do love this idea that he just keeps trying the same strategies over and over and over again, and because of his wealth and influence and power politically and power in the Force and his own strategic mastery and ability to engage with people and warp their minds, he is able to get away with that a lot of the time. But the times that he crucially fails, it is that hubris, it is that narcissism that prevents him from taking a step back and realizing this is a square peg and a circle hole, and this ain't working. So I love the idea that there are.
They like to manipulate. Sorry, I just the Sith whole thing is they manipulate the Force to work for them, which is why if you want more Sith stories, you're gonna get more science. So because that's what they look at it scientifically, clinically. I think you're totally dead on with that.
It's hubris, it's narcissism, but I think at its core, it's also cynicism. He banks on people making the negative choice, and the inherent goodness in characters is always what catches him off guard. The fact that Vader would have enough love for his son to turn on the Emperor, he never accounted for that, because that's not something that he would ever do. And he assumes that then can be extrapolated of every being in the galaxy is some evil shithead like he is. And so whenever someone does a good thing, he doesn't have a plan in place for that, because he can't conceive of making that choice in the first place.
Yeah, he banks on Padme being just as cowardly as he is in the Phantom Menace.
Exactly.
He's like, what do you mean you're going back to fight the Trade Federation? Maul, get down there right fucking now and kill them all. It's that. It's his always only answer is keep lying, kill them all. That's all he has. At the end of the day, he has two tricks that he's able to just expand to the nth degree. And that's why I love, again, and you have all of these people who, again, fucked up people like Palpatine will attract people who are fucked up in the same way he is. So of course you have these conniving little bastards like Moff Gideon who are a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Super Gideons all over the galaxy. That I think that's really cool. I'm in the early stages of cooking a video about my Rey movie pitch that involves Darth Krayt, much to a lot of my friends' chagrin that it's Darth Krayt who's the villain. A huge part of that, the facilitate and condensing Krayt's elaborate backstory and overcomplicated backstory, is that idea of people just kind of, kind of just going Project Necromancer a la carte, and just kind of picking the parts that work for them out of what he's doing, because you don't have him breathing down your neck anymore.
And I think a lot of people thought he would never come back. They thought the project was doomed to failure,
Oh, yeah.
and that
I
the
actually-
resources
yeah.
wasting
I
away.
actually-
You know,
just came up with an antagonist for New Jedi Order, building off of what Pat said with when we're going into like Nomi Sunrider type of stuff with Force Sever and taking away someone's ability to use the Force, and with Jared building on the whole nickel and diming technology thing, it brings me back to how, you know, people have appropriated Maxine technology in the past. People have appropriated the path engines. And so with the technology with the technology that's left over from Project Necromancer, and I pointed at that comment that you had displayed, the Night Sisters with Mother Talzin, or maybe someone else from Night Sister lore, could theoretically come back in a way where they use Pat's idea to sever their connection. Maybe it's Rey, maybe it's one of her students. They sever their connection with the Force, and then they use Jared's idea to transplant their essence into a clone of a Night Sister, and that Night Sister is the antagonist of the entire New Jedi Order, where the Night Sisters are rebuilt upon this kind of false idol that has been created through Necromancer, through taking someone's Force ability and giving them that. And then so they have like the Night Sister magic and the Force, and they create this huge threat. And so like Rey's journey, whether it's her or one of her students, is to try and take back their Force connection and try to like answer this threat at the same time.
I like that.
All right.
I think it's hilarious because
Hold on, Jared.
Sorry,
I gotta
sorry.
cut us off because we're all
sorry.
nerds and most of us got ADHD. So if we keep going, we're gonna keep going. So
I didn't hear no bell, Chris.
Let's build onto that though.
It goes hand in hand with the Ascendants and Dr. Afra too. And like I want to see all of that like explored in the new era too.
That would be cool.
So I do want everybody to be able to wrap up with a piece. I'm going to start with the Dyad because they have their own wrap up for their show that is currently streaming right now. And then everybody is going to get 45 seconds to let people know where they can find you and any remaining thoughts you have on this discussion. So Pep, Brandon, take us away.
Yeah, I just wanna say for everyone that's been on this panel, and if you are on our YouTube channel right now watching the stream, make sure you go follow every single person that's here. They're all wonderful people. This conversation just through and through has been fantastic, and I definitely want everyone to come on to Dyad in the Force at some point to speak about a topic they love to talk about. But in general, this was a blast. Thank you, Chris, for putting this together and inviting us. Chaco, I'm going to leave you with the final word so that we can wrap up.
Yeah, just like I said. So if we don't already have your contact information, we'll be reaching out to you so that we can arrange something in the future. So thank you. Jared, from a previous stream, the best thing I can say that I heard said about Darth Krayt was that he's the biggest hat on a hat character of all
Yeah,
time.
he is, and I love every single motherfucking hat stacked on a hat.
No, that's accurate. That's accurate.
No, but for everyone in the comments here, and please make sure you're following, Star Wars Lawyer, and for everyone on the Dyad in the Force, thank you for hanging out. We certainly appreciate it. There'll be more conversations. We got Acolyte coming out next week, so ton of stuff. So stay tuned. Thank you, and may the Force be with y'all.
That's it.
Pleasure to meet you guys.
On to the next one.
For light and for life.
We are all the
Always.
May the Force be with you again.
That was for Pep and Brandon's wrap up. So now
we're
for everybody else, we're going to start with you, Kyle. 45 seconds. Go.
To kind of restate my conclusion from earlier, I am very casually pro Project Necromancer. I wouldn't say I'm invested enough to have strong feelings either way. I don't hate it. I don't love the execution. I am excited to get more breadcrumbs because that connective tissue is really what Star Wars that's what I enjoy about it, you know. So getting to see those connections get made will always be gratifying for me. There was an idle thought that I had during this conversation, thinking about the parallels between people siphoning off little bits of resources from Project Necromancer and all of the scientists who worked on the freezing process of Walt Disney that took that technology and then later used it to develop their own cryo-based companies. Like, that's a very real thing. And I do wonder if there's some sort of a meta joke being made there about this like, intense amount of resources being spent on a fruitless effort to preserve someone's natural life. So I guess that would be my final thought. I'm Kyle Katarn on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, pretty much anywhere that there is a social media handle. Mine is Kyle Katarn. I also have a non-Star Wars YouTube channel called Grizzled Wizard, where I'm reacting to a bunch of non-Star Wars stuff for the first time, like Godzilla, Alien, Predator movies. It's a lot of fun over there, so go check it out. Thank you for having me on, guys. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for coming on. Make sure you check out Kyle's stuff. Next, we're going to go with Emma. Go.
I'm Emma. You can find me Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I don't post a ton on TikTok yet. I'm trying to get back into it. Once again, the ADHD be ADHD and having a toddler is no joke as far as capacity goes. But my handle is Leia Hutslayer everywhere, and you can find me. I would love to have you there. And I just want to say how special this has been. I, once again, just want to tell you all how much I admire all of you and look up to you and love your work. And so this has been really special to be included in this. Yeah, I just am absolutely chuffed just to be able to participate because you guys are just the best. And I hope we get to do this again sometime. And yeah, I hope you guys join me on every platform because I would love to have you and have you cry about things with me all the time.
All right. Thanks, Emma. Thanks for being on here. Next, we're going to go with Jared.
Yes, like I said earlier, you know, I go 50-50. I like the ideas. Execution could use some work. I want more. I want every single detail I can get my hands on how Project Necromancer works and what the end game and start goal was. But on the whole, I guess I'm team Project Necromancer. For Scotty Holiday, good God. They're not wrong. They're not wrong. Happy Pride. Calls them like he sees them. No, you guys can find me over at the Nerd Academy podcast, as well as our sister show in the same YouTube channel and podcast feed, Knights of the Nerd Republic, where we talk about Star Wars. Obviously, like the Acolyte coverage coming up. We're going to be having our X-Men 97 review coming out early next week as well. I am in a Star Wars trivia league called Epic Confrontations. It's on the Star Wars in a Galaxy YouTube channel. And I'm in a Star Wars real play RPG show called Ionized Bastards. I play an edgelord ex-inquisitor because I'm predictable. And yeah, check that out on the All Remaining Systems YouTube channel. It's a lot of fun. It's my favorite project. And I'm, much like JJ, doing an anime show too called the Pro and Noob Podcast, where Mitch from the Comic Book Cast is showing me Neon Genesis Evangelion for the first time. So check out all that stuff because I don't know how to shut up.
All right. Thanks, Jared. Thanks for coming on. Make sure you check out Jared's stuff. Next, we're going to go with May.
All right. So, yeah, I guess it would be pro Project Necromancer. I think I've said a lot already today, so I'll just praise everybody here. I feel really, really honored and a little bit confused, but grateful that you included me in this. And it's been a really great conversation. So thank you. I look up to all of you so much. So thanks for having me. You can find me at Darkside May on pretty much any social media channel. I do cosplay and starting YouTube channel as well. So those are my main places you can find some new content. So and on Twitter. So thank you.
Thanks, May. Make sure you guys check out May's work and make sure you give her a follow. All right, next we're going to go with Pat.
Alright, yeah, it's been so awesome to be here, and I love it. talking with everyone here because we turned into our own little Star Wars writers' room towards the end, and and as as I said at the beginning, we are not Lucasfilms, but we definitely could be if we wanted to be. And so it's been amazing talking with you guys, and I am pro Necromancer because even if it's just its whole job was just to bring Palpatine, Sheev back to end him, it's a good thing because this guy needs to be gone once and for all. Because like in the EU, he just dominated even after multiple clones were gone, and we need him out of the way going forward. You can follow me on TikTok at St. Pass _Separatist Rebel and on Twitter at St. Pat of Stars. I also have I'm building up a TTRPG channel called Roll of the Fates. I'm planning a couple things right now. I'm working on a campaign that's set in Power Rangers universe, and I'm trying to get some Star Wars one shots up and running. So I can do that, and we'll see where things go with that. I'll definitely probably contacting all these awesome people out here to get on that if they want to join. And I just love this community, and I love you all guys.
Thanks, Pat. Make sure you check out Pat and tune into some of those, TTRPGs because you may see some familiar faces.
Ooh. Glove shadows, if you will.
Indeed.
Glove shadows.
Next, we're going to go with you, Harris.
Well, I guess I'd be pro Project Necromancer. Like I was like leaning neutral, but like leaning more towards the pro side of things. And if you want to find me anywhere besides the pod ones, you could find me at Harrop Productions on TikTok and Instagram. Harrop _edits when I occasionally tweet. And like I said, of course, on the pod ones, I'm leaving all that socials to Luke.
Briar back from the dead. I'm dying.
And I'll peace out of here because I'm going back to the editing dungeon where Luke will drag me back to.
Well, I don't. You're making a false narrative.
Well, we're going from one Padawan to the other. Luke, tell the people where they can find.
This is some horseshit. Like
Before
Aaron just
Luke,
goes, "I'll go back to the
45 seconds.
Look, you give me a cookie every once in a while.
This is bullshit. First of
The
all,
Padawans are fighting again.
Hey! This is some
Mom and Dad are fighting.
Hey,
they are
you
not mom
stop
and dad.
it. You wait.
They're like
You're
the
pointing
middle,
the wrong
they're like
direction.
the middle child
Stop
and the
it.
youngest child.
Stop it. All right. Anyway, you can
Yeah.
find all of this chaotic energy on the pod ones on all social medias, and you can follow me at Jedi Master Eggs if you want to just hear my unhinged thoughts about how I don't like Tom Bombadil.
You don't?
How dare you?
Don't even.
Back to the back
Briar.
room with you. Banished.
Well, Briar said
Are
it.
you gonna?
You're getting
You
getting
can-
banished, Prince Zuko.
You can scratch those guest appearances on Pod ones. I don't know.
No, my chain.
All right. Make sure you follow Luke and Harris at the Padawans or the Padawans podcast here on YouTube,
real quick.
and follow Jedi Master Eggs. And you got one other thing, Luke.
House of the Dragon reactions. Nick and D Wise Guy will be joining us for Acolyte, so be on the lookout for those as well, with Mason Windu and JJ as well. So, okay.
All right. Thank you guys. Next, we're gonna go with Nick since you got that shout out.
That worked perfectly, didn't it?
Yeah.
I'm going to carry JJ's flag in the sense that I want Project Necromancer to go away. I want Star Wars to do something new with Rey's antagonists. We've done the Imperial thing through 6 movies. Let's find something new. And hopefully, I liked the Night Sister idea. I thought that was a really cool one, but someone new with a new objective rather than Jedi versus Sith. You can find me on Twitter and on TikTok at NDWiseGuy. As Luke mentioned, I'm going to be with the Podwans doing Acolyte reactions starting on Tuesday, which I'm really excited about. I tend to make videos and tweet a lot about the High Republic. It's my favorite era. So if you're interested in the High Republic, feel free to give me a follow. And Chris, thank you for putting this all together. This has been great fun.
No problem, buddy. Glad you could be here. Make sure you follow Nick. And next, we're going to go with Star Wars Facts Guy.
Oh no. Oh dear. Okay. What was the question you wanted to ask me earlier? You said you had a question. Was it pro or anti Project
Well, it
Necromancer?
was if you wanted to go if we were going away from Palpatine for Project Necromancer, would you want to go with that?
Would I want to like have nothing
Like
more come up?
more content, but it's not about Palpatine. It's Project Necromancer in a different direction, like, you know, like with the Night Sisters or like the Nile or something like that.
I don't want to see it ever again. I'm going to be honest.
Okay.
I never want to see it again. I think we need to kind of distance ourselves from all these things. You can distance yourself away from the Skywalker saga and the Palpatine drama and that whole kind of like lineage struggle while still incorporating like those similar elements. I heard ideas of Night Sisters. Yeah, sure, let's do Night Sisters. There's so many things we can talk about. There's so many ways going forward that we can take it. I've always been of the mind, and it's a single-minded opinion. I definitely get that. I like the idea of Star Wars having a full stop. Like there's an end to it. But I know it's a franchise and it's rooted in being a franchise and an IP. It's gonna go on forever and it's never gonna end. So as long as we're doing new things and pushing new boundaries and not being afraid to be like, oh, we need Empire 2, we need First Order 3, and Rebels 5. As long as we try to do new things and push new boundaries, I think we'll be all right. Project Necromancer, no. The idea of cloning and reviving and how technology grows and changes with the times, yeah, sure, let's do it. As long as it makes narrative sense. Lore can be written in a way that it'll always make sense. But narrative is organic. That has to be nurtured and cared for. So as long as it's good and it's nurtured and looked after, do whatever you want. I'm all ears for anything.
All right. And where can the people find you?
The people can find me at Star Wars Facts Guy with the 2 little cute underscores on the side, because some people like to take my usernames and use them for devious, mischievous means.
Right.
Find me on TikTok. I talk about a lot of things. I talk about Star Wars and I'm branching out. I'm a multi-facts guy. For years, I used to be fact guy, but I know a thing or two now. So now it's facts, it's plural. So we're talking about a lot of things going forward. Join me on this adventure as we hype up Acolyte for the next couple of weeks. We're diving deep into that. We're not looking at Easter eggs. We're not looking at all that stuff. I want to talk themes. I want to talk story. I want to talk how it's resonating with the High Republic and the prequels, and how Leslie's vision of marrying kind of the Old Republic and prequel era together, how that's going to translate going forward. I'm super stoked, and I want to see everyone there.
All right. Thanks, buddy. Glad to have you on there.
Thanks
Enjoy
for bringing me, man.
the rest of your day as the Nubs Nation ambassador of New Zealand.
Gotta
Catch
do it
you later.
Cheers, man.
All right. And Briar, last but certainly not least. We started with you, we end with you.
I guess I bookend things. I guess for my answer about Project Necromancer, I'm also sort of like, I always, as a writer, as a storyteller, I like to go into stories with curiosity. I don't think that there's ever an inherently bad plot point, right? It is how you're going about that narrative, is how you cultivate that narrative, and it's about saying something new. It's about trying to innovate. That's one thing that Star Wars, I think, why it was so important and impactful when it first came out, is that it was innovating previous things. It's like there's nothing like new like in the pieces of Star Wars, right? It's that they made a collage of old things to make something that felt fresh and unique. And I think that is that what makes Star Wars still important today, that they're constantly innovating to tell better stories and to lean into the art of filmmaking. And as long as like this Project Necromancer is innovating in the space of not just filmmaking but of storytelling, I'm all for it. But if you're not going to do anything, don't bore me. I think that's my always thing. Always, I want to be entertained. I want to be impressed. And I feel like as long as that the Project Necromancer is doing that, you can keep telling me stories as long as you keep me interested. And I'm getting to the point where I'm losing interest. And so I think that's what I'm hoping, that I'm pro for it if you're going to do a good job. But like, don't try to do a backflip if you're going to land on your ass. That makes sense.
Yep.
That's my opinion on it. Because then I'm just gonna look at you like, yeah, yeah, that's what we're doing. But yeah, that's my opinion on that. Yeah, and I guess for where you can find me, at @BinaBees_. Everywhere that's important on the internet, I try to make it easy for you to find me. My name is Briar. I know there's a big confusion about the beginning of the session of this.
My bad.
No, it's all right. No, my Briar, Bennett, these are names that I go by in this space. Briar, he, they pronouns. I talk about everything that's going on in my brain. I have an English degree. I talk about storytelling. I talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion in fantasy and sci-fi. That is what my degree focused in. So I like to bring that into anime, My Hero Academia specifically, that's going on right now. Dragon Age, which the new game is coming out this summer. So if you're following me for Star Wars, I'm sorry. Like in a few months, it's gonna be Dragon Age. I apologize for nothing. And also just talking about my own stories and taking up space in the TTRPG space, which is tabletop role playing. If you don't know what that is. I'm just a jack of all trades. I do cosplay occasionally. I do everything nerdy that you could possibly imagine. So if you like that, BinaBees_. Swear to go. That's all. Thank you for having me, friend. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here and kicking off this idea in my brain.
Anytime.
All right.
Do I leave the studio? Yes.
I gotcha. All right. So thank you, everyone that's still here. Thank you for everyone that has paid attention and watched and tuned into the stream. I hope you enjoyed this roundtable discussion. It's going to be something I'm going to do more of. I'm going to call it, Star Wars Lawyer Sidebar, because sidebars and, court is when the judge brings you over and the attorneys talk it out. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do more roundtable discussions about different topics in Star Wars. So if there's another topic that you want to see a bunch of Star Wars creators talk about, put it in the chat, tweet at us, links in the description for everybody that was on this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a great rest of your night. And remember, until next time, there are more of us. Take care, everybody.